Jamal Musiala has suffered a horrific injury and it's going to have big consequences for Bayern's season. Who's going to replace him? Is it going to be someone new like Luis Diaz, like Nick Woltemade, someone old even like Thomas Müller? Let's see. Hello OTCers, happy Monday, but a less happy Monday, I suppose, for Bayern Munich, who not only went out of the Club World Cup to Paris Saint-Germain at the weekend, which really was a target for Bayern, I believe, but the worst bit is the injury to Jamal Musiala, as you've probably seen already, an injury that he suffered at the end of the first half in a collision with Gigi Donnarumma, the Paris Saint-Germain goalkeeper, and at least initially there was quite a bit of recrimination. I mean, really, what we have to say first off is this is something that is going to have lasting effects for Bayern, and that's part of the reason for that recrimination. I think Bayern just being in shock, knowing that Musiala's injury is not just an inconvenience, but something that could really affect over the duration their season to come, 25-26, it casts a bit of a shadow over it. Obviously, it ended badly. Broken fibula, dislocated ankle, some ankle ligament damage as well, which means Jamal Musiala is going to be out for the next 4 or 5 months, is the current estimate. There's no reason to assume that he won't be back fighting fit halfway through this season. But we've got to just recall that, really, halfway through this season. Musiala is this injury is leaving Bayern in a really bad spot because Musiala is absolutely irreplaceable. There's no two ways about that. He has been Bayern's best player for some while now. The fact that they signed him to a big new contract extension, which cost them an absolute fortune, by the way, was really recognition of how important he is and how much he will be the centrepiece of Bayern going forward. And I think if we watch Bayern, or if you've watched Bayern closely over the last couple of years, and I've seen them firsthand a ton of times and watch them every week, of course, he is a player who can just do some stuff that other players cannot do. In terms of ever since he was a teenager, he's had that sense of responsibility that he wants to drive the game, that he wants to bring the play forward, that he wants to dribble round players. So it's not just the extraordinary finishing from outside and inside the box. It's not just the assists. It's the way he opens up the game and unbalances the opposition. Now, of course, if we go back a generation of Bayern, we're used to it being all about wingers. We're used to it being Frank Ribery and Arjen Robben, who were their creative mainstays for such an incredibly long time and so incredibly potent together, even when they slightly fell out off the pitch. And now Bayern have sort of continued in that tradition of continuing to have high-impact wide players since. And sometimes Musiala, because he's played off the left on occasion, has been sort of miscast as a wide player. And we think about him fitting, or at least when he initially came into the team, we think of him fitting in with the other Bayern wide players like Serge Gnabry, like Leroy Sané, like Kingsley Coman. Now, the three of those, despite being way more experienced, and of course now Leroy Sané has gone off to Galatasaray, left during the Club World Cup, those may be older and very decorated footballers, but none of them are as impactful or as consistent as Jamal Musiala. So really, as time has gone on, rather than Bayern making stuff happen through wide areas all the time, they've got a way through Musiala of making stuff happen through wide areas. And of course they have very adventurous fullbacks. Of course they've used Rafael Guerreiro in that position, even though he's not really a left back, plays there for Portugal, but he's really better as a sort of inside left midfielder. Konrad Laimer, who's midfield, has played as right back on the other side as well. So this is when Alphonso Davies is currently injured at the moment. Sacha Boey has had a lot of fitness problems, the right back, since he's arrived from Galatasaray, very adventurous right back. So they're still keen to use those wide areas, but Musiala gives them options in the centre. And when we look to how they might replace him in the short term, medium term, I suppose, because it is a fairly medium term injury. I guess we're looking at more central figures rather than wide ones. So, for example, following the reports in Germany that a deal has been agreed, or the contours of a contract have been agreed between Luis Diaz of Liverpool and Bayern, nothing agreed between the two clubs, so nothing happening super imminently. He has been put forward as a potential Musiala replacement. And of course, we've seen Luis Diaz playing central areas. We've seen him play at centre forward to great effect in the Champions League last season. But he is not essentially a central player. He's a wide player. Despite the fact that he has thrived in those central areas as well, they would be bringing him in as a left winger who could go either way, who could come inside and score goals as well. He's really a response to the fact that they haven't been able to get Florian Wirtz. They haven't been able to get, who would have facilitated a slightly different shape to the Bayern team. But they've been looking at other left wide players. Bradley Barcola, they had interest in. Nico Williams, they always said to him before he re-signed with Athletic, which was the shock of last week. They always said to him, if the move to Barcelona falls through, we're here for you. We want to sign you. So Luis Diaz is the player they've moved on to next. He's not really the player who's going to replace Musiala in the short term. Now, of course, there are two possibilities. One possibility being Nick Woltemade of Stuttgart, who had such a brilliant under-21s Euros with Germany as well, scored 6 goals in that, scored over 20 goals for Stuttgart last season in a real breakthrough season. He desperately wants to go to Bayern, and they want him. Stuttgart have put the price at 100 million euros. Yes, 100 million euros for the 6'6" striker, which is remarkable. Now, look, because he's 6'6", I think we can think of him as just a number 9, but the idea has always been with Kompany that he maybe wants to play him off Harry Kane. Now, that would initially be as a replacement, you would think, for Thomas Müller. He could play instead of Kane Woltemade as well, so hopefully they don't have to flog Kane. They can make him last a bit longer. There would be a gradual handover, because it's always felt as if Kane wouldn't stay there forever, but he's there for a good time rather than a long time with Bayern. So in medium term, we can see the end to that. But Woltemade could play in conjunction with him because he's got so much more to his game. He's great at bringing other people into the game, and he's got a really good vision of what's happening around him, as well as being able to score the goals, as well as being difficult for central defenders to deal with because of his side. So that's one possibility. Of course, Stuttgart need to come down from 100 million. Bayern are happy to go north of 50 million, which would still represent a brilliant profit for Stuttgart, who signed him for free from Werder Bremen last season, where he couldn't get in the team, showing you what a meteoric rise it really is for Woltemade. And he is a long-term project. So again, independent of what's happened to Musiala this signing, but maybe they could be encouraged to hurry it up to replace him in the short term, because he could definitely play that role, even if he isn't exactly the same sort of player. Now, the other possibility, remember when Musiala got injured in the back end of last season, who was he replaced by? The old faithful, Thomas Müller. Thomas Müller, who's still been there at the World Cup, having signed a short-term extension to play at the Club World Cup. And it was suggested immediately after the injury to Musiala that perhaps Thomas Müller, a few people in Germany suggested, would be given a short-term contract. It's something that Lothar Matthäus suggested as an idea in his role as pundit, maybe through till Christmas, as he hasn't yet decided where he's going following the termination of his time with Bayern as a player. Now, Thomas Müller himself didn't want to answer this after the game. He felt it was too fresh after the injury to Musiala. He felt it was a bit distasteful, were the words he used. But as well, I think now we're in the cold light of day. There's a sense of Müller and Bayern. Of course, the story will never truly be over, but in terms of him as a player there, it is finished. It was expected that he would announce his decision of which MLS side he's going to join later in the tournament. Of course, Bayern hopes to go deeper in the tournament, so the idea was he would be in the US. The idea from his side anyway was he would be in the US and announce where he was going. He's been having discussions with Los Angeles FC for the moment while he was still in the States. Now they've all gone back to Munich where they'll continue discussions, so it hasn't quite worked out in that sense. But there's still a feeling that the playing part of Bayern is behind him now, and this new project is what he's looking for going forward. It was the club's decision, as Müller made clear at the time, for him not to continue. And I guess the third thing to add to it is the fact that Müller for Musiala in the back end of last season, it didn't work brilliantly. Of course, Müller's wonderful, the space interpreter, the Raumdeuter, as they call him. So he can make good use of that sort of number 10-ish or 9.5, but he doesn't have the ability to accelerate past players like Musiala does. So look, it affects the whole tempo of the game. And I guess this is it, really. The fact that however they decide to replace Musiala in the medium term, there is no replacement. There is no like for like. So whether they sign Woltemade and use him there, whether they sign Luis Diaz, if they can't make the two deals come off, and they decide to pop him into a more central position for the moment, none of them will quite be able to do what Jamal Musiala can do, the crown prince of German football and one of the very best in Europe. Thanks for joining us, as I hope you do every Monday. Like and subscribe so you get the videos every single Monday. And don't forget to subscribe to On the Continent, the podcast as well. Me, Dr. Adebayo and guests every single Thursday, bringing you all the biggest discussion points from European football in great depth. And every Friday, Ask OTC on the same feed where we answer your questions. Get at us on socials or leave them below the line here. We'll see you next Monday.